Have you ever found yourself asking, why does God keep allowing me to be hurt? You've prayed, you've fought, you've endured, and yet the pain keeps coming. The betrayals don't stop. The disappointments seem endless. You wonder if God even hears you anymore. You cry out in desperation, yet the silence from heaven feels deafening. If God is good, why does He let this happen? If He loves you, why does He let others wound you so deeply? Could it be that your suffering is not without purpose? Could it be that the very pain you despise is shaping you in ways you cannot yet see? Consider this. A sculptor does not create a masterpiece without first taking a chisel to the stone. The process is violent. Pieces of marble are struck away, chipped off and broken. But with each strike, the vision of the artist comes to life. The pain you feel is not pointless. It is precise. It is refining you, molding you into something greater than you were before. What if the very trials you are begging God to remove are the tools He is using to transform you into the person He destined you to become? Job, a man of immense faith, lost everything: his wealth, his health, even his children. His friends told him he must have done something wrong, but Job knew his suffering had a greater purpose. In the end, God restored him, but not before testing him, stretching him, and refining him. Could it be that your suffering is not punishment, but preparation? What if your wounds are the very place where God's power is about to be revealed? Pain has a way of drawing us closer to God in ways that comfort never could. When life is easy, we tend to forget Him. But when we are broken, we fall to our knees. And in that place of surrender, we find His presence in ways we never imagined. Perhaps God allows the hurt to keep us dependent on Him, to remind us that He alone is our refuge, our strength, our provider. Have you noticed how pain changes the way you pray, how suffering makes you seek Him with a hunger you never had before? But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. Your pain is producing something powerful. Every tear you've shed, every wound you've endured, is preparing you for something greater. Do you think the enemy would attack you this hard if there weren't something on your life worth fighting against? He sees your potential even when you don't. He knows that if you rise from this, you will be unstoppable. So he tries to break you before you realize your strength. But here's the truth. The more you have suffered, the greater your calling. There is purpose in your pain. God doesn't waste wounds. He doesn't allow suffering without a reason. And though you may not see it now, one day you will look back and understand why He let you walk through the fire. The betrayals, the heartbreak, the losses, they are all part of the divine plan. Every great person in the Bible went through suffering before stepping into their destiny. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery before he became a ruler in Egypt. David was hunted down and rejected before he became a king. Even Jesus Himself was beaten, mocked, and crucified before He rose in victory. So, if you are hurting, if you feel abandoned, if you are questioning why God keeps allowing this pain, know this: you are being prepared for something greater than you can imagine. Your suffering is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter. The pain is temporary, but the transformation is eternal. And when you come out of this, you will not just be restored, you will be stronger, wiser, and more powerful than ever before. What if everything you're going through right now is not meant to break you, but to build you? What if the pain, the betrayal, the unanswered prayers, and the relentless struggles are not signs that God has abandoned you, but proof that He is strengthening you? Faith does not grow in comfort. It is not developed in easy seasons. It is forged in fire, built in the storm, and refined through trials. God is not punishing you. He is preparing you. And the more He has planned for your future, the stronger your faith must be. That is why He allows the struggle, That is why the pain lingers longer than you wish, because if your faith is not tested, it cannot be trusted. Faith is not just believing in God when things are going well. It is trusting Him when everything is falling apart. It is standing firm when the ground beneath you is shaking. It is walking forward when you cannot see the way. James 1:02. 3. Faith says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." God allows trials to refine us, to purify our faith, and to remove anything that is not aligned with His purpose. Think of gold. Before it can shine, it must go through intense heat, melting away impurities until only the purest form remains. This is what God does with your faith. He places you in situations that strip away fear, doubt, and dependence on anything other than Him. Peter, one of Jesus' most devoted disciples, once walked on water. But the moment he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the storm, he began to sink. This is what happens when our faith is weak. We waver in the face of adversity. But when we are tested, when we endure pain and still trust God, our faith becomes unshakable. Imagine a young eagle. When it is time for it to learn to fly, the mother eagle does something that seems cruel. She begins to remove the soft feathers from the nest, making it uncomfortable for the eaglet to stay. She pushes it to the edge, forcing it out of the nest. The eaglet falls, flapping wildly, terrified that it will crash to the ground. But just before it hits the earth, the mother swoops down and catches it, lifting it back up, only to let it fall again. She repeats this over and over until one day the eaglet spreads its wings and soars. The mother is not being cruel, she is preparing her child for the life it was created for. If the eaglet stayed in the comfort of the nest forever, it would never reach its potential. Could it be that God is allowing your struggles because He is pushing you to grow? Could it be that He is removing the comfort, forcing you to rely on Him so that you can finally take flight? It's hard, isn't it, to trust God when nothing makes sense, to believe when everything seems lost, when you pray for relief and instead the suffering increases, when you ask for open doors and instead face rejection. It feels unfair. It feels like God is silent. But what if the silence is the test? What if the waiting is the lesson? Abraham waited years for God's promise of a son. Joseph spent years in prison before stepping into his destiny. Even Jesus Himself endured suffering before His greatest victory. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. This pain is not permanent, but the faith you develop through it will be. God is not trying to break you. He is building you. He is teaching you to trust Him beyond what you see, beyond what you feel. He is preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. And when this season ends, you will not just survive, you will soar. So hold on, keep trusting, keep believing, because what is coming is far greater than what has been. God is not finished with you yet. What if I told you that sometimes the pain of loss is not a punishment, but a divine intervention? That the people who walked away from you, the ones who betrayed your trust, the ones you thought would stand by your side forever, were removed for a reason. It doesn't feel like a blessing when someone you love turns their back on you. It doesn't feel like protection when the friendship you poured your heart into suddenly crumbles. It feels like rejection. It feels like abandonment. It feels like God has forgotten you. But what if you could see what He sees? What if you could understand that some people were never meant to stay in your life because they were holding you back from the purpose God has for you? God sees what you cannot. He hears conversations you will never hear, knows the intentions of hearts you cannot read, and understands the hidden dangers that you are unaware of. Sometimes we get so attached to people that we ignore the warning signs. We justify mistreatment. We overlook betrayals. We cling to relationships that are draining our spirit. But God, in His infinite wisdom, steps in. He removes the wrong people, not to hurt us, but to heal us. He allows doors to close, not to punish us, but to redirect us. And yet, in our limited understanding, we grieve what we should be grateful for. Look back at your life. Think of the people you once thought you couldn't live without. The ones who left, the ones who hurt you, the ones who disappointed you. At the time, their absence felt unbearable, but now you see it differently. Now you understand that if they had stayed, they would have kept you from becoming who you were meant to be. God's protection doesn't always come in the form of comfort. Sometimes it comes in the form of loss. It is through that loss that He positions you for something greater. Imagine a gardener tending to a tree. The branches are full, the leaves abundant, but some parts are weak, diseased, and draining the tree's strength. To the untrained eye, the tree looks healthy, but the gardener knows better. He takes his shears and begins to prune, cutting away what is no longer beneficial. At first, the tree appears wounded, bare, stripped of what once covered it. But in time, something incredible happens. The branches grow back stronger, the leaves return fuller, and the tree flourishes like never before. The pruning wasn't destruction, it was preparation for greater growth. Could it be that God is pruning your life? Could it be that He is removing people who are draining your energy, weakening your faith, and keeping you from your purpose? Could it be that the friendships, relationships, and connections you are crying over were never meant to be permanent? We often fight to keep people that God is trying to remove, and in doing so, we delay our own growth. But it's not easy, is it? The heart clings to what is familiar. The mind resists change. We hold on because we are afraid to be alone. We fight for people who wouldn't fight for us. We chase after those who walked away, hoping they will see our worth. But God is saying, stop looking back. Stop trying to reopen doors that He has closed for your protection. Stop mourning the people He removed. They were part of your journey, but they were never meant to be part of your destination. Think of Lot's wife. When God was delivering her from destruction, she was given one instruction: do not look back. But she did. She turned around, longing for what she was leaving behind, and in that moment she was frozen in place. She could not move forward because her heart was still tied to where she had been. Some of you are stuck, not because God hasn't prepared a way forward, but because you keep looking back. You keep holding on to relationships that have expired. You keep trying to rebuild bridges that God burned for a reason. It hurts when people leave. It hurts when the ones you trusted turn out to be the ones who harm you the most. But what if their departure is making room for something better? What if the person God wants to send into your life cannot arrive because you are still clinging to the wrong one? What if your next season, your next blessing, your next opportunity is waiting on you to let go of what is no longer serving you? God never takes without replacing. He never removes without restoring. If He is pulling someone out of your life, it is only because He is making room for something greater. Trust the removal, trust the separation, trust the process. Because one day you will look back and realize that the very thing you cried over was the very thing that set you free. What if the rejection you are facing right now is not a setback, but a setup? What if the doors that refused to open, the people who turned away from you, and the opportunities that slipped through your fingers were not meant to harm you, but to lead you towards something far greater? Rejection feels personal. It cuts deep, making you question your worth, your purpose, and even God's plan for your life. But what if rejection is not the enemy you think it is? What if it is God's way of redirecting you to something beyond your imagination? When a door slams shut in your face, it is natural to feel frustrated, confused, even abandoned. You wonder why God allowed you to get so close, only to watch everything fall apart. You replay the moments in your mind, searching for what you could have done differently. But what if the rejection you are mourning is actually divine redirection? What if God saw the danger ahead, the heartbreak that was waiting, the disappointment that would have crushed you, and in His mercy, He stopped you before you could walk into something that wasn't meant for you? Look at Joseph. He was rejected by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and later imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. At every stage, it seemed like he was being pushed further away from his destiny. But what he couldn't see in the moment was that every rejection was positioning him for something greater. The betrayal that could have destroyed him actually directed him toward the palace. The prison that could have broken him actually became the passageway to his purpose. Had Joseph never been rejected by his brothers, he would have never arrived at the place where God needed him to be. Rejection hurts because we tie our value to people's approval. When someone chooses not to love us, not to accept us, not to support us, we assume it means we are unworthy. But God does not measure your worth by human validation. He does not need someone's acceptance of you to fulfill His plan for your life. In fact, sometimes He will allow people to reject you so that you stop seeking approval from those who are not meant to be part of your future. Think of a ship setting sail. Before it leaves the harbor, it must be untied from the dock. As long as it is tied down, it cannot move forward. Could it be that rejection is God's way of untying you from places, people, and situations that are holding you back? Could it be that He is loosening your grip on something temporary so He can give you something eternal? The friendships that ended, the jobs that didn't work out, the relationships that fell apart, all of them were part of your journey, but they were never meant to be your destination. Yet we resist. We fight to hold on to what God is trying to remove. We beg Him to open doors He has intentionally closed. We try to force ourselves into places that were never meant to sustain us. But God sees what we cannot. He knows that some doors must remain shut, because walking through them would take us further away from our calling. He knows that some people must leave because they do not carry the capacity to go where He is taking us. When Jesus returned to His hometown, He was met with doubt and disbelief. The very people who should have celebrated Him rejected Him, and because of their unbelief, He could not perform many miracles there. Had Jesus stayed where He was not welcomed, He would have been limited by their lack of faith. But He didn't beg for their acceptance. He didn't try to prove Himself to those who had already made up their minds. He moved forward, and because of that, His purpose was fulfilled. Rejection is painful, but it is also revealing. It shows you where you do not belong. It exposes who is not truly for you. It separates you from what is not aligned with your destiny. Instead of mourning what walked away, start praising God for what He is making room for. Start shifting your focus from what you lost to what is coming. God is not punishing you. He is preparing you. He is not withholding something from you. He is positioning you for something better. There is a reason you feel like you don't fit in certain places. There is a reason some people do not support you, no matter how much you try. You were not meant to stay small to make others comfortable. You were not created to beg for a place at a table where you were never meant to sit. God is building a table for you elsewhere, one where you will be welcomed, honored, and valued. So stop knocking on closed doors. Stop pleading for people to see your worth. Stop chasing validation that does not align with your destiny. What is meant for you will never reject you. What God has ordained for your life will always find you, no matter who tried to keep it from you. Rejection is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of something greater. It is proof that God has something better. It is confirmation that He is shifting you towards something beyond what you could ever imagine. So the next time you face rejection, instead of asking why, ask where. Where is God leading me now? What new doors is He opening? What greater purpose is He preparing me for? Because the moment you stop seeing rejection as the end and start seeing it as divine redirection, you will finally step into the life God has been preparing for you all along. What if the struggles you are facing right now are not obstacles but tests? What if the pain, the uncertainty, and the hardship you are enduring are not signs that God has forgotten you, but proof that He is refining you? Faith that has never been tested is faith that cannot be trusted. God does not just call you to believe in Him when things are easy. He calls you to trust Him when everything is falling apart, when the doors are closing, when the answers don't come, when you feel like you are standing in the fire with no way out. That is when your faith is being tested. And it is in those moments that God is shaping you into someone who can withstand anything. Abraham, known as the father of faith, was tested in a way that defies human understanding. God gave him a son, Isaac, after years of waiting, only to ask him to sacrifice that very child. Imagine the weight of that moment. The very promise that God had given him was now being tested. Abraham had to make a choice: trust God even when it made no sense, or cling to what he could see and understand. But Abraham believed that God's plan was greater than his fear. He walked up that mountain in obedience, trusting that God would provide. And at the last moment, God stopped him and provided a ram instead. That test was not about losing Isaac. It was about proving that Abraham's faith was unshakable. Your faith is being tested in ways you may not even realize. Every disappointment, every delay, every painful situation is a question from God. Do you trust me? Do you trust that I am working even when you cannot see it? Do you trust that I have a plan even when everything looks like it is falling apart? Do you trust that what I withhold is just as much a blessing as what I give? True faith is not built when life is easy. It is built in the moments when everything in you wants to give up, but you choose to believe anyway. Think of a silversmith refining silver. He places the metal into the fire, and the intense heat melts away all the impurities. The process is painful, but necessary. The silversmith watches carefully, never leaving the silver unattended, ensuring that it is not consumed but purified. And he knows the refining is complete when he can see his own reflection in the silver. Could it be that God is refining you in the fire right now? Could it be that He is allowing the heat not to destroy you, but to remove everything that is not of Him, so that when you come through this, you reflect His image? The fire is not a sign that God has abandoned you. It is proof that He is preparing you. But the waiting is difficult. The test feels unbearable. There are moments when you wonder if God will ever come through, if the promises He made will ever come to pass. And the enemy whispers in those moments, telling you to give up, to turn back, to stop believing. That is why so many people quit right before their breakthrough, because the test feels too heavy. But what if you are closer than you think? What if the very thing you are asking God for is just on the other side of this test? Job lost everything: his wealth, his family, his health. His friends told him he must have done something wrong. His wife told him to curse God and die. But Job refused to turn his back on God. He sat in his pain, questioning, wrestling, but never abandoning his faith. And because of that, God restored him, not just to where he was before, but greater. That is what happens when you pass the test. When you choose faith in the fire, you come out stronger, wiser, and with blessings you never could have imagined. But faith is not just about waiting. It is about what you do while you wait. Will you worship while you are still in the struggle? Will you trust when the answer has not yet come? Will you declare God's goodness even when everything around you feels broken? The Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, not because God had forgotten them, but because they kept failing the test. Instead of trusting God, they complained. Instead of believing, they doubted. And because of that, what should have taken days took decades. How long you stay in your struggle is often determined by how you respond to it. Some of the greatest blessings in your life will come after your hardest tests. The relationships, the opportunities, the breakthroughs you are praying for. God is not withholding them to punish you. He is preparing you to handle them. He is making sure that when the blessing comes, it will not crush you. He is strengthening your faith so that when you step into the promise, you will not be moved by fear. Right now, you are in the middle of something that feels heavy, but do not let the weight make you forget that God is still in control. This is just a test, and when you come through it, you will not only have a testimony, but you will have a faith that nothing can shake. Keep going, keep believing, because the promise is still ahead. What if the people who walked away from you were never meant to stay? What if their absence is not a loss, but a divine shift? It is easy to hold on to relationships, believing that longevity is proof of purpose, but time does not always equal destiny. Some people enter your life for a season, not for a lifetime. And when their time is up, they must leave. It is painful, it is confusing, and at times it feels unjust. It might, in excellence, help it in time healthy. But what if God is allowing their departure for a reason you cannot yet understand? There are moments when you feel the weight of separation, the sting of distance from those who once stood close. You wonder what went wrong, what changed, why the bond that once seemed unbreakable is now nothing more than a memory. You question if you could have done more, if you could have held on tighter, if you could have changed something to make them stay. But what if their departure was never about what you lacked, but about what God was preparing? What if their presence in your life was never meant to last beyond a certain point? Holding on to temporary people can delay permanent blessings. Seasons change, and with them, so do people. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next chapter. Some were only assigned to teach you a lesson, to help you grow, to prepare you for something greater. Their purpose was never to complete your journey, but to contribute to a portion of it. Yet, the pain of separation makes it difficult to see this clearly. When someone leaves, you feel the emptiness of their absence. But you must remember that just because a relationship ends does not mean your purpose has ended with it. God sees what you cannot. He knows what lies ahead. He understands the weight of carrying people who are not equipped to go where you are going. Some people bring more harm than help, more distraction than direction, more pain than peace. And when He removes them, it is not to hurt you, but to free you. It is in your human nature to hold on, to resist change, to cling to what is familiar even when it no longer serves you. But God, in His infinite wisdom, knows when it is time for you to walk alone. Loneliness often follows separation, but silence is not abandonment. In the moments when it feels like you have been left alone, you must recognize that God is still with you. He is guiding you, strengthening you, and teaching you to depend on Him rather than on people. Human relationships are fragile, but God's presence is unshakable. He is not like people who change, who walk away, who give up. His promises remain, His love endures, and His plan continues even when others leave. There are times when you will not understand why someone left. The absence will feel like a wound that refuses to heal, a betrayal that cuts deeper than words can express. But even in that pain, you must trust that nothing happens without purpose. Some departures are deliverance in disguise. Some endings are the beginning of something greater. Some losses are actually gains, though your heart may not recognize them as such. Growth requires space. The more you hold on to what no longer fits, the harder it becomes to step into what God has for you. A season of separation is not a season of destruction. It is a season of preparation. When certain people walk away, it is not a signal of your worth diminishing, but a sign of God's plan unfolding. You may feel broken in the moment, but what you cannot see yet is that you are being positioned for something better. There will be times when God asks you to let go before you understand why. You will be called to release what feels irreplaceable, to step into a future without the people you once depended on. And in those moments, faith must be stronger than fear. Trust must be greater than confusion. Your willingness to surrender must outweigh your desire to hold on. It is in the letting go that you make room for what is next. It is in the release that you open yourself to something greater than what you lost. If people could see your full journey, they might stay. If they understood your destiny, they might walk beside you. But their departure is proof that their role in your story has ended. When God removes, He replaces. When He separates, He elevates. When people leave, His presence remains. Your journey does not stop because someone exits. The absence of people does not mean the absence of purpose. You are still moving forward, still growing, still becoming who God has called you to be. Even in loss, you are not alone. Even in separation, His plan is still unfolding. What if everything you are going through is preparation? What if every trial, every hardship, every painful experience is not random suffering, but a process designed to strengthen you for a greater purpose? It is easy to see challenges as obstacles, as roadblocks that slow you down, but what if they are not barriers at all? What if they are the very things shaping you into the person God created you to be? There are moments when life feels overwhelming, when the weight of your struggles makes you question whether you will ever rise above them. You pray for relief, for breakthrough, for clarity, yet instead of instant answers, you face more hardship. You wonder if God hears you, if He sees your efforts, if He cares about your pain. But what if the very struggles you wish would disappear are the tools God is using to equip you? What if the discomfort is not punishment, but preparation for the future He has already set in place? Growth is never comfortable. It stretches you, challenges you, pushes you beyond what you thought you could endure. You cannot stay the same and expect to step into something greater. There are things you need to learn, endurance you need to develop, wisdom you need to gain before you can handle what is coming next. You may not see it now, but every challenge is refining you. Every setback is teaching you something. Every loss is making you stronger. God does not waste anything. Every season of hardship carries a lesson. Every moment of struggle builds resilience. Every test reveals something about yourself that you may not have recognized otherwise. There is no wasted pain when God is involved. He takes what was meant for harm and turns it into preparation for something far beyond your understanding. What feels like resistance is often refinement. What seems like delay is often divine timing. Patience is required in the process. There are things you are praying for, things you are working toward, things you are believing will come to pass. But God's timing is not your timing. What He has planned for you is far greater than what you can imagine. But He will not give you something before you are ready to handle it. The preparation process is not always clear, but it is always necessary. Discomfort often signals transformation. When everything around you feels uncertain, when the ground beneath you feels unsteady, when familiar things start to shift, it is not a sign that you are lost, it is a sign that you are growing beyond where you have been. The places, the people, the circumstances that once felt comfortable may no longer fit, and that is not a mistake. That is preparation. The hardest moments in life often shape the strongest individuals. It is in the seasons of struggle that your character is built. Your endurance is tested, your strength is revealed. It is easy to have faith when everything is going well, but real faith is forged in adversity. It is tested when you feel like giving up. It is strengthened when you continue to move forward, even when there are no visible signs of progress. There will be times when you do not understand why certain things are happening. The confusion will make you doubt, the struggle will make you weary, the waiting will test your patience. But if you could see the full picture, if you could see what God sees, you would know that this process is not meant to harm you. It is meant to elevate you. Every tear, every battle, every closed door is shaping you for something greater. God does not call people without preparing them. He does not place you in situations without equipping you to handle them. The trials you face today are strengthening you for what is coming next. There are skills you are developing, wisdom you are gaining, resilience you are building that will be necessary for the next chapter of your life. You may not recognize the transformation happening within you, but it is there. The process requires trust. It requires believing that what is happening now has a purpose, even if you do not yet see the outcome. It requires surrendering your need for immediate answers and allowing God to work in His time. The preparation is not just about what you will receive. It is about who you are becoming. Every struggle, every lesson, every moment of endurance is making you into someone who can handle what is coming. God is preparing you, shaping you, refining you. What you are experiencing is not without meaning. The pressure you feel, the difficulties you face, the trials you endure, all of it is part of a plan greater than you can see. Keep going, keep trusting, and know that nothing you are facing is wasted. What if everything you are experiencing is leading you into a deeper connection with God? What if the trials, the moments of isolation, the pain that feels unbearable, are always God is drawing you closer to Him? When life is easy, when things go as planned, it is tempting to move forward without seeking Him. But when hardship comes, when the path is uncertain, when the weight of struggle presses down, that is when the heart cries out for something greater. It is in suffering that faith is tested, and it is in suffering that faith is strengthened. God allows certain challenges not to destroy you, but to remind you where your strength truly comes from. When everything else fails, when people disappoint, when plans fall apart, it becomes clear that only He remains constant. There are moments when He removes distractions, when He silences the noise around you, not to leave you abandoned, but to bring you back to Him. The absence of worldly comfort creates a hunger for something eternal. The emptiness that trials bring is not meant to break you, but to open your heart to a deeper relationship with Him. There is something powerful about surrender. It is easy to rely on personal strength, to believe that success, security, and fulfillment come from your own efforts. But when hardship comes, when prayers seem unanswered, when everything within you is fighting to hold on, that is when surrender becomes necessary. Letting go is not weakness. It is recognizing that God's ways are higher than your own. Trusting Him even when nothing makes sense is what deepens faith. It is in those moments of surrender that true peace is found, not in controlling outcomes, but in knowing that He is in control. God's presence is most evident in moments of brokenness. When there is nothing left to cling to, when everything has been stripped away, when pain feels unrelenting, that is when His presence becomes undeniable. The times of silence, of waiting, of wondering why things are not changing, are not signs of abandonment, but invitations to draw closer. He is not distant. He is waiting for you to seek Him, to listen, to trust in ways you never have before. Faith is not about having all the answers. It is about believing even when answers do not come. It is about trusting that He is working even when nothing appears to be changing. It is about knowing that every delay, every trial, every moment of discomfort is shaping something far beyond what the mind can comprehend. The path of faith is not free of struggle, but it is in those struggles that spiritual growth happens. Strength does not come from ease, it comes from enduring, from continuing forward even when everything in you wants to stop. The presence of pain does not mean the absence of God. It does not mean that He has turned away, that He has forgotten, that He is indifferent to what you are going through. In every tear, in every moment of doubt, in every question that lingers in your heart, He is near. The depth of faith is not measured by never experiencing hardship. It is measured by trusting God even in the midst of it. He is not asking you to understand everything. He is asking you to trust that He is working, even when nothing makes sense. There will be times when you feel like your prayers are unheard. You will wonder if He is listening, if He is moving, if He cares about what you are going through. But faith is not about seeing immediate results. It is about believing that He is working behind the scenes, in ways you cannot yet see. It is about knowing that His timing is perfect, that His plans are greater, that His wisdom far surpasses your own. Waiting is not wasted time. It is a process of deepening trust, of refining patience, of building endurance. Every trial, every delay, every unanswered prayer is an opportunity to draw closer. It is a call to lean on Him, to seek Him, to trust that He is shaping something greater than you can imagine. The deeper the struggle, the greater the opportunity to know Him in ways you never have before. When everything else is uncertain, when the world around you shifts, when the things you once relied on no longer provide security, He remains. His presence does not waver. His love does not fade. His faithfulness does not change. God is not distant. He is not unaware of what you are facing. He is not absent in the moments that feel heavy. He is drawing you closer, removing distractions, allowing certain challenges to refine your faith. The more you seek Him, the more you will find that His presence is the only thing that truly satisfies. The things of this world fade, but a relationship with Him is eternal. In every trial, in every moment of struggle, He is there, waiting for you to turn to Him, to trust, to believe that He is working, even when everything around you says otherwise. What if everything you have endured was never meant to break you, but to transform you? What if every tear, every rejection, every painful moment was a necessary step toward the person you are becoming? You have questioned, you have struggled, you have carried burdens that felt unbearable, yet through it all, God has been working. The pain was not in vain. The losses were not wasted. The trials were not meaningless. Everything was preparation for what He has planned for you. You may not see it now, but one day you will look back and realize that every closed door was protection, every rejection was redirection, and every season of struggle was shaping something greater within you. The people who left, the hardships that tested your faith, the moments when you felt like you could not go on, all of it was necessary. God does not remove without replacing, and He does not test without purpose. Faith is not just believing when things make sense. It is trusting when nothing does. It is standing firm when the storm rages, when the path is unclear, when the waiting feels endless. It is knowing that God is always in control, even when circumstances seem out of control. The road has been difficult, but you are still standing. You have endured what was meant to destroy you, and that is proof that you were never alone. God has been with you every step of the way, strengthening you, guiding you, molding you into the person He created you to be. So now stand in faith. Walk forward with confidence, knowing that your trials were not a sign of abandonment, but of preparation. Trust that what is ahead is greater than what is behind. Let go of what no longer serves you and step into the future with boldness. You were not meant to remain in sorrow, to dwell in loss, or to carry the weight of the past forever. You were meant to rise, to grow, to become everything God has called you to be. God has not forgotten you. He has not abandoned you. He has been preparing you all along. The pain had a purpose. The struggle was refining you. And now, as you move forward, do so with the certainty that He is leading you towards something far greater than you ever imagined. Trust the process, trust the journey, and above all, trust Him.